Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Excited for today's show. We've got none other than Kevin Lowe on the line with us. So, Kevin, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. For everybody listening, we're just talking, before we hit the record button. Kevin is an Army veteran, spent a lot of time in the Army Reserves. So it is a couple of days after Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day. Thanks for your service. And that's how we'll start.
Yeah,
So,
back at you.
yeah. So from there, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into multifamily.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a surgeon. I've been a practicing surgeon for about
Mhm.
12 or 13 years now, and has spent most of that time as a
Mhm.
cancer surgeon, a pretty
Okay.
time-intensive career,
Mhm.
and got through my training, spent that 10 years or so in practice, and COVID came up, and there were some challenges associated with that time for everybody, but especially in
Yep.
healthcare, I think. And at the same time was kind of looking around for the next thing to do.
Mhm.
I'd always had kind of a creative personality and had always been a little bit jealous of doctors that had managed to have a career in medicine and also, start a business of their own. And, I started looking into that, had one single family for a number of years, and that was kind of there. And so just started learning and investigating and figuring out what sort of the first steps would be. And
Mhm.
that's grown over the last few years.
Awesome. Now, yeah, COVID was especially hard for physicians, and you said that kind of got you thinking twice about it. What was like that carrot at the end of that proverbial rope there that was really pushing you towards that?
Yeah, so with all W-2 jobs, I think there are challenges, and really, of course, you're putting into all your time is invested in realizing someone else's vision, and
Mhm.
that had always been there as a frustration for me. But then when COVID came, a lot of decisions were being made, from my perspective, a lot of them were not in the patient's best interest, and so that cued me in that I was in a position where maybe the choices that I would make for my family or make for myself were not mine to make. I
Mhm.
would make those choices, and so that was part of it. And also at the same
Yeah.
time, I was becoming increasingly frustrated with the rather very slow growth of my savings in
Mhm.
mutual funds, and that's really all I had done to that point. And so those two things, and then another consideration at the time was that I was increasingly aware that I only had so many years left to work, and that when I quit working, of course, the income was going to stop. And I
Yeah.
had these five kids that could probably use some help, and
Yep.
and also wanted to model for them what it is to be an owner and not an employee. And so all of those things kind of came together to push me toward making the leap.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of the things that you mentioned, go through a lot of different people's minds at various points. Your time's tied to a paycheck. I've got five kids as well. I guess I'm one of the other crazy guys out there
Yeah.
that did that. But so moving from medical profession into real estate and getting kind of a more of a toehold, how did that work out for you? What was your goal at the beginning, and how did you proceed to start getting into real estate in general?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people, I started with single families
Mhm.
and really back up a little bit. I think again, like a lot of people, I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad. Sort of simple a message as that book is, it was really profound for me at the time and shifted my thinking about, trading time for money versus being an owner.
Yep.
And so bought a few single families and those went as well as single families can go. I think
Hmm.
bought them reasonably well and they've appreciated and done well. But there's of course a limit to what you can do with single families. And so then started looking at multifamilies and syndications and learning about those and yeah, just moved on from there.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I think most people, follow a similar path. Single family is more accessible. It's not rocket science or cancer surgery, I guess, to go out and buy a single family house and turn it into a rental. I
Yeah.
think anybody can do that, but it does take a little bit more getting into the larger commercial projects. So, but yeah, so let's talk about that progression, single family to larger assets. What did that look like for you? And related question, and what were some of the challenges you faced doing that?
so about 3 single families, and it was becoming clear that there was a limit to that.
Mhm.
And I thought about, scaling that. Maybe I need 40 single families. And that quickly after having 3, I realized that wasn't going to be another job. And at that point, realized there was a knowledge gap. As you say, single family is pretty straightforward. You buy one that covers the mortgage and a little bit of cash flow, and you're probably going to do okay. But that's not the case with multifamily. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong, and a pretty big learning curve there. And so, I was thinking about this the other day. The thing I did that really accelerated everything was getting a coach. And, it's kind of overnight. One day getting a coach seemed like something for somebody else, or maybe a frivolous expense. And then really the next day I realized that was the only way I was going to get where I wanted to go. I had to get somebody else that was going to, was going to help me out and tell me, point me in the right direction.
Amazing how that works. It was the same for me. I was kind of like the DIYer that was trying to get into multifamily, and it was literally just a one day, walking out of like a 12-unit apartment complex that was for sale, scratching my head and wondering, I don't even know how to tell if this is a good deal.
Right.
And 2 weeks later, I dropped a dime or two to pay for coaching myself. So
Right.
yeah. Awesome. How did coaching help you out? And let's just ask the question. How did coaching help?
Yes, it's really been amazing. I've said this before, but you think in my early 50s and having done some, been in the military and had a career as a surgeon, and I would have a broad skill set, but it didn't include the skills that are necessary just for being on my own and making decisions that weren't surrounded by an institution or didn't have a formal educational and certification licensing infrastructure around it. Really, as an entrepreneur, you're on your own and you can do a million different things, and some of them are good or some of them are bad. And so, really that's kind of the first step, I think, at least in my coaching experience, was just getting comfortable in the discomfort of all those choices. That really is a lot of time that coming to grips with that and growing through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, a little different. I mean, very, very similar, working full time. And, the coach really accelerated things, helped me fill in a lot of the knowledge gap. And like you say, just got you more comfortable with stuff, that really helped with me. I ended up getting a lot of confidence from coaching. So, well, cool.
Yeah.
So lead us from there. How did things progress for you?
So I've had a coach just about a year and a half.
Okay.
And in that time now own a small multifamily. I've invested in a syndication, and I've done some hard money lending, and then we can soon to put an LOI on a larger multifamily construction project. So that's where I am in terms of the portfolio. It continues to progress. I think the big moves I've made that I wouldn't have made without a coach were getting all my social media on a calendar and setting up a website and owning the process of really moving toward syndications.
Yeah, and I think, talking about that, those things are important. And I'm wondering for myself, as you mentioned that, if I didn't have a coach tell me that I needed to get those, I wonder how long it would have taken me to actually do it, So let's talk about the syndications, syndication strategy, and then after that we can talk about some of the other pursuits you're doing. So as far as the syndications go, what type of deals are you looking for, and what role in the syndication do you like to play?
Yeah, so far I've been an LP, and that's been the sum total of my
Okay.
involvement in syndications. I think I wanted to be an LP before I was a GP or a manager,
Right.
and so that was a step along the way, and that's been really educational. I think this is most of the properties I have are local, but this one is out west in Scottsdale, Phoenix area. And so you really use that as a educational opportunity to learn what it is from the LP, from the LP side. Yeah. So moving forward, I hope to be on the other side of that.
Okay. And you mentioned you're putting offers on larger properties right now. What type of properties are you looking to get into?
Yeah, so I went through everything, and I think that's another one of the real benefits of a coach has been to focus my efforts, because it's really easy to sort of see there's so many different ways to go about this. At least in my experience, it's kind of easy to see every shiny toy out there and try to latch on and make a deal work. And so I really began to focus my interest and think about what it is that I really want to do. What's the thing that really gets me excited?
Right.
And because I live in a rural area in northern Indiana, and because there's such a need for higher quality housing than what currently exists, I've started to focus on new construction. And so
Mm-hmm.
that would be, as it progresses, my role there will be as manager and developer.
Awesome. 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 So, I mean, you're in Indiana and you're looking for some of the rural areas out there. What are some of the challenges you're seeing with working in a rural area?
Yeah, so they're significant. I think on the one side, there's the opportunity of the need, right? There's
Yep.
everybody knows it. Everybody knows that,
Mhm.
and every town, every decent sized town wants more housing, wants to bring in more
Yeah.
business. But constraint is, of course, that their market rents are not what they are in urban areas. And so one strategy among many is to bring in the municipalities and the counties and leverage tools and their understanding and their desire to develop housing to bridge that gap between rents and construction costs. And it becomes less about identifying a property or a piece of land that's in the right, exactly the right areas or exactly the right property in a urban market, more about building those relationships and finding the right contractors and getting the investors on board with the mission of the build and sticking with it and seeing that through. That's been my experience with this. It's all motivated for me by the thought of improving my community. It's really what's behind that. And that's what I was interested in from the first.
There is something special about improving your hometown. I started investing in the Southeast, and my wife was born and raised in Columbia, South Carolina, and we had a couple of investments there. But I'll tell you, it is a little bit more special for me investing in a place where I grew up, which I started doing about a year and a half ago. I'm born and raised in Salt Lake, and like I said, very special to be able to change your hometown and look at properties that you used to drive by every day, and that's definitely a little bit more special than investing in a different place. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives me the opportunity to drive by the constructions that's going up and, be involved in that in a way that I couldn't if it was a few hours away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I started, I was living in DC, investing in South Carolina. And the only reason that worked for us is, once again, that's where my wife was from. And so we put the whole family in a car, drive down and spend a week at my wife's grandma's house or her aunt's or cousin or something like that. But don't recommend. I definitely don't recommend, investing long distance if you don't have to. So
yeah, I agree with you.
Awesome. Well, what else are you involved in? You mentioned the development, LPs and syndications and potentially getting into other syndications. What else are you involved in right now?
Yeah, so I just those really the projects I'm working on right now, and I'm really trying to I had my fingers, I think, in a few too many things. So I'm really trying to focus on those are the new build that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And then I just hired a VA, which is probably another thing I should have done some time ago. But the other sort of portion of my work, my real estate work time is getting our communication and our goals up to speed and to beginning the other side of the syndication deal, continuing building the other side of the syndication deal, getting investors on board.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking about, we're working on hiring another one. I got a VA doing a lot of social media stuff. She actually schedules my podcast too. So you've talked with or communicated with my VA at one point. But I'm at the point where I think I need another one. So it is a game changer. If you've got a good VA that can take a lot off of your plate, it is a big time game changer. So
yeah. Absolutely. There's just the urge is to do everything, myself. And that was just another thing, one day it seemed like a luxury and the next day it seemed like an absolute necessity, just getting to the point where you realize there's a lot that needs to be done and you can't do it.
Yeah. And I mean, some people look at the cost and this was the biggest deterrent for me up front was the actual cost. It's hundreds or maybe low thousands of dollars a month depending on where your VA is at, but end of the day, when you look at how much they actually buy you in efficiency, it's a game changer. It really is. So I mean, for example, on the podcast, I used to spend probably 6 hours per episode on the podcast between finding a guest, doing all the pre-recording preparation, the editing, the posting, and everything else. And now with a VA and an editor helping out, it's just, I pay a little bit of money, but same thing. So I'm talking more to the people who are going to be listening. You obviously understand all that, but it is a game changer and it allows you to focus on the more important stuff. So
absolutely. an
Oh,
interview number, and they were all, they were all high quality. And I think I found one that really is going to be great for my business.
yeah. Yep. Well, best of luck with that. Hopefully
Yeah,
the
thank you.
VA works out extremely well. Yeah, same. Like I said, I'm in the hunt for someone else too, somebody to help me buy my time back so that,
Yeah,
once again, I can focus on the most important things. So,
yeah.
well, cool. So, anything that any part of your story that we missed that we need to talk about?
I spent a lot of my time thinking about how the organization of my
Hmm.
days has changed. And I think this probably will relate to a lot of people who are just blowing
Hmm.
and going in their W-2 job. The kind of amazing thing that has accompanied my transition from being blowing and going
Hmm.
as a surgeon to having some time now has been the ability
Yeah.
just to determine how I spend my time, and making that kind of a North Star in terms of what this business is about, and getting my time back so I can do the things that are really important to me, and setting up my day so that time is blocked for certain activities and I can do the exercise and get a decent amount of sleep and all that stuff. That's just, I mentioned that here because that was a real frustration for many years. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's amazing how being sleep deprived, always being pulled in a million directions, never
Hmm.
having control of your time kind of changes how you relate to other people, changes how you relate to yourself. And so that's really, I guess, the take home there is it's worth it. Whatever risk and
Yeah.
discomfort's involved in moving to this kind of entrepreneurial lifestyle, boy, it's worth it, and it's real.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I started a couple years before you, and I've been able to leave my full-time job,
Mm,
and real estate is my full-time job right now, and
sure.
so it definitely helps you to buy your time back. I will say, in my case, if you're familiar with the cash flow quadrant, the
Mm,
Kiyosaki model, you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad earlier, so I assume
mm,
you are, but I think I moved from the E quadrant for employee to the S quadrant, and right now I'm trying to move from S to B, is kind of
yeah,
like my progression.
yeah,
So yeah, I started making enough money where I looked at my day job and I'm like, I don't have to do this anymore. And now I'm trying to move from the S quadrant to the B quadrant so that I don't have to be there anymore. And
yeah, yeah.
that's my goal. But
Yeah, well, I think you have to expect some of that, and there's limitations to what I can do. Still having to work a full-time job, and how much time I can spend on real estate. So I do really try to be intentional about
mhm,
what I focus on and what I take on. It's easy
absolutely.
for it just to become another job too.
Mhm. Well, awesome. Well, a couple questions as we wrap things up. First question, what's next for you?
I'm all in on this development deal that I'm doing. Just had meetings today with the city officials and the local development committee and some brokers and contractors, and really just trying to put that all together. And it just seems such an opportunity to be able to add to this community in that way,
Mhm,
and really hopefully just take someone like me to
mhm.
put all those pieces together. So that's where I'm focused on the other side of getting the word out there as this project develops, and looking to partner with other people to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And next question, what advice would you give to somebody who's looking to start in multifamily or get a little bit more serious in multifamily?
Yeah. I think other people have different opinions about this, but I really think that starting with multifamily or duplex is really a good way to get your feet
Yeah.
wet, just to go through the motions of doing all things real estate and the contracts and tenants, and sort of getting an idea of what that's all about. I think that's a great place to start. And then I would
Mhm.
say, if you've done that, the next hurdle is your education, and that's coaching and that's reading. I don't think there's another way to do it. Trying to figure that out on your own, it would just take too long at best, and at worst, you may get yourself into trouble.
Yep, absolutely. All right. And last question, how can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So my website is
Mhm.
ljpropertiesre.com. My email address is km as in Michael at ljpropertiesre.com.
Mhm.
You can reach me through either of those, also on LinkedIn, and
Okay.
any of those would get you in touch with me.
Awesome. Sounds good. And we'll have links to all of that stuff in the show notes for anybody who's looking to learn more about Mr. Kevin Lowe. So, Kevin, thanks for coming on the show. Very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That was fun. I appreciate it.